Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Chris Mattia. My amateur radio call sign is Whiskey 6 Alpha Hotel. This is WaveTalkers Live, episode number 70. Today, we're talking about aircraft tracking for EmComm Situational Awareness. And I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues, Dan, NR6V, and the person who's not on screen right now, but has just kind of wandered away, is David W0DHG. He's kind of over there, I think, right? Oh, there he comes. Hey, there he is, David W0DHG. All right. So with that, let's get started doing our initial WinLink check-in here. I'll pull this down and bring the slides up, bring me down. If you have access to WinLink, then send us a WinLink check-in. Use the standard WinLink check-in form and send your check-in to all three of us, W0DHG, NR6V, W6AH, and our tactical call sign of WaveTalkers. I'm going to go ahead and remove these guys because normally David's
sorry, Chris.
he's still getting himself set up. In the comments section of the check-in form, today's question is, do you own an SDR receiver and have you tried aircraft tracking yet? We're going to step through the process and show you how to get that all set up today. But in the meantime, let me switch over to the walk-up here, and we'll walk through how to do that check-in. So here I've got my copy of WinLink open. Just come on up here to the upper left, click the new message button, and then here in the top, go ahead and click the select template option. You want the standard templates, go ahead and give that a click, and come down here to the general forms section, give that a click, and come on down here near the bottom, and you should find WinLink check-in.txt. Go ahead and give that a double click, and if the demo gods are with you, it should open up in your web browser of choice. You want to make sure you click that date and time field so it sets the current date and time for this form according to your computer. Go ahead and click OK. Then for the status, this is going to be an exercise. So you go ahead and select that. Let us know the band that you're sending your traffic in on. If you're sending it via Telnet, that's fine. Just go ahead and leave that set to NA. For the mode, let us know which mode you're sending this in. Again, I'm going to leave mine set to Telnet. Down here in the send to, this is where you're going to enter in all of our call signs. W0DHG, NR6V, W6AH, and our tactical call sign, WaveTalkers. Go ahead and separate each of those with a semicolon, and that should work just fine. Call sign of the initial operators on site. If you've got more operators that are there with you, go ahead and list those in here for you. Here's your station contact name and your station's call sign. In the location, go ahead and fill that out. Let us know where you're connecting from. You should have your latitude and longitude automatically filled in for you, either from the center of your grid square or from a connected GPS dongle. Down here in the bottom is where that comment section is. This is where you're going to let us know if you own an SDR receiver and if you've tried tracking aircraft. Go ahead and hit the submit button. When you're finished with that, you'll get a couple of pop-ups that'll show up. Just hit OK through each of those. When you get to your blank browser screen, you're good to go. All your message should be entered here into the message field. Go ahead and just post that up to your outbox. And I'm going to go ahead and open the session, and we'll do a quick check and see if any check-ins have come in. I'll click the start button, and it looks like we do have check-ins coming in from all over the world. We'll go ahead and click the download checked messages, and later in the show, we'll come back and we'll check in and we'll see where everybody's checked in from. In the meantime, let's jump back over to the slides and get into today's topic, which is EmComm Situational Awareness, Aircraft Tracking. This is going to be episode number 70. So this takes me back to December 11th, 2017. It was about 1 o'clock, a little after 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The Thomas fire had just broken out in Ventura, California on December the 4th, 2017. So we're just a few days into this. And I was following along on Twitter from this ham. This is Ben, AI6YR. If you don't follow him, you really should. He is way into a lot of different things that you're able to do, and he's very up on the latest current events. He posted this tweet up about the Thomas fire, and I reached out to him immediately afterwards. I'm like, how are you doing that? So what this is showing you here in this tweet, in the image here, it's showing you this is a helicopter that's doing water drops on the fire. And what you're seeing here is the flight path of that helicopter over time. And you can see right here, there, and right here, that's the front leading edge of the fire at that time where the firefight was going on. When you're trying to figure out for situational awareness, where do you need to be? Where's the fire? Where are things going on? Being able to track aircraft can be really absolutely key to your own personal safety and to your own success supporting an EmComm mission. So I reached out to Ben and I'm like, okay, Ben, how are you doing this? How are you getting this flight track of this? Because I went on right away and I downloaded a whole bunch of flight tracker apps and I'm trying to find this particular helicopter and it's not showing up on any of the publicly available apps. And Ben just calmly says to me, I have ham radio superpowers. We can do all kinds of amazing things as ham radio operators. Not only can we communicate, we can send small messages back and forth. We've got very fancy antennas that we can use. And you know what? We can even track aircraft live from the transponders that they have on board. And I'm like, okay, I'm sold. How do I get involved with this? And it was literally that tweet that pushed me over the edge to then start studying for and getting my ham radio license. So I did some chatting with him back and forth. And since becoming a ham, something that many of you are going to be pretty familiar with is APRS, or the Automatic Packet Reporting System. Now, this is something that many of us as hams have used in the past. And basically the way that it works is you have from your radio, you're able to send these small little messages that contain a variety of different data that's associated with that message. And it's being able to be picked up by another ham radio that's running the APRS software or that has APRS capabilities. The radio then just decodes the message that came over the air, and then you can do different things with it. So some of these messages will find their way up onto websites such as aprs.fi, and those data can be mapped. There's a lot of other things that can go into this, but this is kind of like the core of what APRS is. And if you missed the episode, back in episode 5 of WaveTalkers Live, we took a deep dive into APRS and pinpoint APRS, and we showed you how to get all this set up. So with that as a background, what we're going to use in order to track aircraft is something called ADSB. Now, what does that stand for? It stands for Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast. Clearly, that is an acronym that is something that was come up with by committee, but essentially, aircraft that are all flying around, they will send these small data packets over the air, and the data packets are picked up by other aircraft. They're picked up by the towers and so forth in order to know information while the plane is in flight, and they're constantly beaconing this information. Well, it turns out as hams, we can also capture those messages. If we tune our radios into the right frequency, we then need some sort of software in order to decode those messages. They're not encrypted. They're available for us to decode, and then some more software to be able to map that or do something with those data. So what do these messages really look like? Well, it turns out they're pretty similar to what we're already used to with APRS. There's a variety of different bits of data in here, but I'm just going to point out a few of them, one of which is the flight number information. There's also the altitude that the aircraft is currently traveling at. There's the speed that the aircraft is traveling at, as well as its heading or the bearing which it's traveling, the direction it's going. and the current latitude and longitude of the aircraft at the time of that ping. And these go out on a very regular basis from the aircraft. They're just broadcast out, and since planes are fairly high, we're able to pick these up over a long distance. You don't need a whole lot of fancy equipment to be able to do this. Now, there are multiple frequencies that they use, but the primary one that they're sending these pings out on is 1090 megahertz, or 1090 megahertz is the frequency that they're operating on. And so all of our ham equipment, for the most part, is able to pick up those frequencies. And we're going to look at some examples in a little while as to how to do this. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, hey, Chris, I've got a variety of different commercial apps. I know there's a bunch of people who have been putting some of them into the chat that they've been using here, including things like FlightAware, Flight Tracker 24, and so forth. There are a bunch of them out there on the market that work. But the problem with a lot of these commercial apps is not all of the data that's collected for every single aircraft is then made publicly available on the apps. So while you may have a good flight tracker app that's great for picking up the commercial plane, so when your mom is flying across the country to come see, and you're able to track where her plane's coming in at, and that it's arriving and those sorts of things, that works great. But if you're in a situation where you have an emergency aircraft, such as a helicopter that's doing water drops, or some of the firefighting ones, and there's a variety of other aircraft that are not tracked by that, being able to pull those data directly out of the air and then to be able to use them is one of those superpowers that you have as a ham radio operator. So what do you need in order to be able to pull this off? Well, the list is actually pretty simple. So the first thing is you need some sort of an SDR receiver and an antenna. Now, for the demos that I'm going to do today, I'm going to show you how to do this with two different setups, one of which is an SDR play, and I have the RSP Duo. It's got two receivers in it. We're only going to use one receiver, so really any of the SDR play SDR receivers are going to work for this. And then I'll show you also how to do it with an rtl-sdr dongle. Now, these are pretty cheap. These, you can pick them up on Amazon for about anywhere from $20 to $30 or $40, depending on the specific sales of the day. They're not great, but these things work really well. And we'll show you how to do that with both of these different devices today. As far as an antenna goes, you're just receiving signals. So the air traffic is going to be fairly close to our 2-meter antennas that we already have. So for today's demo, I'm going to be using my regular N9TAX roll-up Slim Jim antenna. It's literally sitting right outside my booth here, and I've got it only up maybe about 5 or 10 feet. It's not very high, and nothing's very set up with it very fancy. So that's all you really need as far as hardware to go. You need some sort of an SDR receiver, and you need an antenna, and pretty much any of the 2-meter antennas that we use are going to work. They'll be able to pick up the signals. Next thing you're going to need is some software that is specific to the ADS-B decoding. Something's going to receive those signals that's coming in from the SDR, and then it's going to decode that and put it in a format that the mapping software that you need in order to be able to map those data. And so we're going to step through this process. I'll walk you through how to go ahead and set these things up. I'll walk through some slides first, and then I'll do a demo and show you each of the steps and configure it up and running. All right, so let's dive into the first of these, and that's going to be the SDR play. Now, to get this up and running, the full signal chain here is I'm going to be using a RSP Duo. I'm going to use SDR Uno as my SDR software. I'm going to install the ADSB plugin. This is just a standard plugin that you can get off of sdrplay.com. It's just right off of their downloads page. And then we're going to look at two different ways of displaying those data. One, we're just going to use a built-in web browser. And the second, we're going to show you how to use something called virtual radar. So let me jump into this first demo here. This is what SDR Uno looks like when it's up and running. And you get a copy of this at sdrplay.com. Just you need to have the SDR Play device. You can download the software, the SDR Uno. And then also on the downloads page, you'll also see a plugin that's available called ADS-B parentheses dump 1090. And it's just a plugin. It's listed down on the page. So get both of those, do a standard install of your SDR Play, the SDR Uno software, and then run the ADS-B dump plugin. And what you're going to do is you'll come up here on the SDR Uno window, on the main window, you'll just click on plugins. You'll see the ADS-B plugin in the list, and just click on it and then say open, and it should open a window that looks something like this. When you get to this window, there is a settings button that's right here. You go ahead and click on that settings button, and it should open up a little small settings window that looks something like this. There's actually nothing to really configure here. It shows up kind of configured for you out of the box, and it works really well. But what I want to point out are there's three things here, one of which here is at the top, and it says HTTP port, and it is 8080 is the port. We're going to use that as our first way of being able to map this data. The second one is going to be this one, which is called Beast Data Port, and that is going to be 30005. And we're going to come back to that in just a few minutes. So this is just how the thing shows up and how it works. Once the plugin is set up, you just basically click start, and you should start seeing data coming in here. Once you get that, you're going to open up your local web browser and go to localhost 8080. So let me do, and this is going to be some basic mapping. So let me do a quick little demo of this process here. So first, let me go back over to the walk-up that I've got. So this is just my Microsoft Surface. This isn't any kind of like super high-end machine or anything. I'm going to go ahead and open up SDR Uno, just give that a double click. And what I have connected here, if I switch over to here, I have the SDR Play. I have the antennas connected into the 50 ohm port for tuner 1. This is just connected to a Bio-NO battery to provide some battery power. And then the USB cable is connected into my USB switcher here to connect into my Surface. So that's the total amount of the setup, and then the antenna is actually the N9TAX outside. So let me come back over to here. So this is what the software looks like when it's up and running. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to plugins. I'm going to go ahead and click on plugins. It brings up this little window here. And here's that ADS-B. After it's been installed, it just shows up here in the list. And you just click the button that says load plugin. Now, when you do, what the plugin is going to do is it's going to automatically change the frequency and set up everything that you need for this to work. So it's going to automatically change that frequency for you. Here's that settings button. I'm going to go ahead and click on that and see it opens up your little ADS-B settings window. There's that 8080 and the Beast data port of 30005. There's nothing to do there. I'm just going to close that. Now I need to click the play button, and we should, it's going to start picking up data that's coming in. We can see that coming in here. It's all on the right frequency. These little tiny dots that are right here in this location, those are little pings of data that's coming in. But nothing's happening yet because we haven't turned on the plugin. All I have to do is click the start button here, and we're instantly decoding those data that are coming in. And you can see even with an N9TAX, these data are coming in and they are being decoded. So what do they look like? Well, we can see we can actually parse the data right here. We can see the flight information and so forth. But if I just come down and I open up my web browser, remember that port of 8080? So if I come up here and I type in localhost 8080 right here into my web browser, and I just hit return, there we go. We're getting live flight tracking information. These are planes that are actively flying around here And what's going on is over on the side, these are the data. These are the same exact data that are coming in through that SDR Uno, through that ADSB plugin. Now, if I take any of these planes and I click on them, you can start to see they've got a little trail behind them, and that is the path that those aircraft are flying on. Some of them, this is only going to track the planes that, as long as we're tracking them. So the longer the plane is within our range of being able to track it on the air, that flight path will be a little bit longer. So in the event of, say, a fire or something like that, if you're running your ADSB tracker on a regular basis, you should have a pretty consistent track of all of the aircraft that are flying over you, and the software is just keeping track of all that information. You can also see, as we click on the different planes here, we get more information about those planes over here in the right-hand side. And there's some more links that you can get into finding more information about the specific aircraft. And there's different apps that have additional data for them, and so you're able to click on those. But that's kind of the quick and dirty of being able to do this. This alone gives you the situational awareness that you may need in order to be successful. Now, there's some nicer ways to go about doing this. This is just the built-in what the SDR software is doing. It's actually creating a little web server on your computer, and it's running it on that port of localhost :8080. All right, so that's what that one is. Let me go ahead and close this window. And now that I've still got my SDR Uno running, I still have the plugin up and running. But what I want to do is let me jump back over to the slides, because we can go a little bit further with this. There's another here inside of the data window. You can see there's that beast data port, the 30005 port. Now let's go ahead and look at how we would use that. So if you get a copy of another application, it's called Virtual Radar Server, and you can get it at virtualradarserver.co.uk. The app looks like this. This is a free app. It's open source. It uses the .NET. It's a .NET application, and there's a download link up here. You go ahead and you download and install this app like you would any other application on your PC. And when you launch it, it looks something like this. It's not very exciting when you open it up, but what you're looking for is you're looking for the tools section here. You click on tools and then select options. And the options window looks like this. You're going to come up here to the receiver section, click on receiver, and there's two pieces of data that you need to change. First of all, you need to come where is it? You need to come up here and select the first drop down here for format. This is actually a drop down menu here, and you want to select AVR or Beast Raw Feed. You select that drop down there, and then down here for port, this is where you're going to plug in that 30005. So those two pieces of data, you can put it in the Beast Raw Feed and the 30005, and you just click OK. It just brings you back to this screen. There's nothing really exciting going on here, but there is a link here. And if you click on that link, which is 127.0.0.1/virtual radar, it's going to, again, open up your web browser, and it's going to give you some more information. Now, this one, you really want to make sure you've got an internet connection to be able to use this, so you can pull in the additional data that's available. And when it shows up on screen, it ends up looking something like this. So let me do that demo right there. So I'm going to jump back over here. I still haven't changed anything. I'm still running the software, and I'm still pulling in the data that's here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, and I've got it here in my taskbar. There's the virtual radar app. I'm just going to go ahead and click on that and open it up. And the current version is 2.4.4. Looks something like this. Here's that tools menu. I'll go ahead and click on that, and there's the options menu. I'm just going to go ahead and select that. You can see here's the receiver, and that's where I've changed it to AVR or Beast Raw Feed, and I've also changed the port number to 30005, and I'm just going to hit OK. with all that set, now I'm just going to come over here and I'm going to click the virtual radar link. It opens up my default web browser. You can see there's the URL that it's bringing up. And if the demo gods are with me, there we go. We get the same flight information with a map. Now, what's nice about this is as I come in and I start clicking on some of these aircraft in here, you can see there's even more information, including there's an image of the actual plane that's flying over. You can see here's the track that this plane is flying. We'll click on a few others of these and see what else comes up for them. See if we get any other pictures and things of some of the aircraft. And you can go ahead. A lot of these links over here are clickable that you can go in and you can find more information. So that's a real quick and easy way to be able to get yourself set up. If you have one of the SDR Play devices, it works really easy to be able to set it up and track that information. All right, so that's one way of being able to do this. And easily you can see the flight pass and you can see where the incident likely is going on. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to close the virtual radar server. I'm going to go ahead and stop my SDR Uno and close that. And we'll also just quit out of it altogether. Now let's go back over to the slides. Next, I want to show you how to use the rtl-sdr dongle, and that is, oops, wait a minute, this right here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to change the antenna feed from the SDR Play, and I'm going to plug it into the rtl-sdr.com. There we go. And I'll disconnect the USB cable from the SDR Uno, and then we're just going to plug it into my connector here. So this is just USB and it's still connected into my Surface. All right, so let's go back over to the slide. So that's what we're using for there. And here's the overall setup that we're going to use. We'll use the rtl-sdr dongle. We're going to use a software package called rtl-1090. You may or may not need a Windows driver loader called Zadig, Z-A-D-I-G. And I'm going to show you using an application called Plane Plotter. And this was kind of a standard one that was out there for a while. It's questionable whether or not you'll be able to fully find a clean version of this online. Apparently, the site has been down for a little while, and you may or may not be able to find the application. But I want to walk through showing you how to get this whole setup working as well. Here's links to those different applications, and these will show up as we go, but you can go back and watch this and pause. But they're at rtl1090.com, zadig.akeo.ie, and coaa.co.uk/planeplotter.htm. So this is what the rtl-1090 software looks like when you go to that website. What you want to do is scroll down on the page until you find the download for this Jet Vision. You go ahead and hit the download. Get this one that's here in the middle. That is the IMU, which is the installer and the maintenance utility. It makes it a little bit easier to be able to manage it, but any of the three should work for this. You download it and you install it right on your Windows C drive. And when you open the application, this rtl-1090 application, it looks something like this. There's a little start button, and it'll actually map the data directly here right on top for you. And so this lets you know, hey, my dongle is working, it's connected to the antenna, and I'm getting data in here. That Zadig software looks something like this. If you need to get it, some of the SDR dongles, you may need to download this and then run it in order to get the drivers to fully work. But there's the link for what that looks like. Let me go ahead and get this portion of this up and running at this point. So I'm going to come back over to here. Again, I've got the rtl-sdr dongle up and running already. I'm going to come down to my taskbar, and this is that rtl-1090 software. I've added it to my taskbar, but it's just located on your C drive. I'll go ahead and click on that one time, and the application looks like this when it first starts up. And there's not really anything that you need to configure on it. You just come on up here and you hit the start button, and you'll get some different data that starts loading up here. And then these are the data that's being parsed and downloaded directly off the air, off of that rtl-sdr dongle. So this is now operational. In fact, I can come over here right inside of the app. Right now we're looking at the list view. I can come over and click on the scope view, and it brings up a little mapped scope to be able to see some of the information that's going on here. I tend to leave this in the list view so I can see that the data is regularly coming in. Okay, with that working, now I'm going to go ahead and load a program called Plane Plotter. Again, you may or may not be able to find this online at this point. This has been one of the most common one that is used for doing this kind of tracking offline, but it is a much more advanced software package to be able to get it to work. When you bring it up and you start operating with this over time, there's a mode that you can put it in where it's going to calculate for you the area from your local QTH of where you're able to actually pick up traffic. And so this area here is based on the terrain around my home for where I'm able to do live flight tracking. There is a mode in this one where you can click a little button up in here, and it'll actually pull data also in from the internet and merge all of those data together at one time to give you a plot. What you need to do to get this up and running, though, is there's an options menu up here. You go ahead and click on options, and it brings up a window that looks something like this. And really the only settings you need to make here is the mode. You set the mode for the ADS-B mode, and then you set the RTL dongle, the RTL-1090, which is that software that we just opened up and ran. And that's pretty much all you need to do. There will be a green button that's right here. You click the green button and we should start seeing data and little planes appearing in here. So let me go ahead and do a quick demo of that. So our 1090 software, our RTL-1090, is still running. It's still processing data. I've got my plane plotter application running right here. Now, this program is $40. There's a free 30-day trial that you can download. But in order to get a license for it, you do need the full 30-day trial. So here's this. This is up and running. I'm going to go up here to the options menu, and what you're looking for is that IO settings. There's the settings, the mode, and the RTL dongle, RTL-1090. Those two settings we just pointed out. And then all you got to do is come up here and you click on the little green start button, and it should connect. And there we go. We see the planes appearing here on the track. Now, this is nice because you really can load a lot of custom maps into here. You can change the base map that's showing up underneath. And sometimes this works for me and sometimes it doesn't now. You can look at the listing of the data that comes in, and of course it's not, oh, there it is. You can look at the listing of the data that's coming in into your tracker, switch back over to here, and you can see there are the little contrails that are going on, and you have a lot more control with this app as to what you want to do to track the information. But that gives you a couple of options for getting started doing all of this plane tracking information. Now, these, of course, you can click on them and right click and get additional information, and all of the stuff that you normally would find. Like, let's say we want to see some photos of this one. I can click on the Google photo and it'll actually look up that particular plane and find additional images of that particular plane that's flying around right there at that time. So that's kind of a quick overview as to how to get some of this ADS-B stuff up and running. And that covers how to do plane tracking. But how would you find a plane? For that, we're going to go over to Dan. And this is kind of the reason why we got all of this stuff kicked off for this week anyway. So Dan, why don't you take it away?
All righty. Just as a little background, I'm a pretty avid scanner listener. because I volunteer with the fire department, I listen primarily to fire frequencies. On this particular night, I wasn't listening, but a friend of mine who likes to do the same thing, although he likes to listen to the PD frequencies. Anyway, he alerted me to an incident that was going on, a significant incident, and I started listening. And this is sort of what I've gathered from a variety of sources and different sources of data. But just to give away the end a little bit on the topic of the day, this is a case where hams tracking flights might have been really useful.
That's a fire from Fire 3 on Track 8. Fire 3, go. Okay. Metro from Fire 3. Did you receive any calls in 88 or in 99 first in for a downed aircraft? Fire 3, not at this time. Do you have approximate location? Metro Fire 3, Mulholland Drive is about a half mile east of the 405 freeway. Mulholland and the 405, roger. We'll create an incident.
Okay, so here's a map of that area. The 405 freeway is just off to the left of the screen. Mulholland is the thicker white line running from left to right. And so they had limited information from, by the way, Fire 3 is a helicopter. He happened to be up in the air and got information from Van Nuys Tower about a plane that had dropped off their radar. So this is the general area. You can see that it's, considering it's in the middle of LA, it's quite mountainous and a lot of canyons, but it's also very heavily residential area. So the fact that a plane might have gone down and nobody called in was sort of interesting right from the beginning. So based on the information from the tower, they got the opinion or the idea that the plane had gone down in the area of Stone Canyon Reservoir. You guys all may remember Rick Nelson and the Stone Canyon Band. That's where that name came from. Anyway, it's on the south side of Mulholland Drive. Mulholland is the top of the ridge in the Hollywood Hills. And they searched in this area for about an hour and found absolutely nothing. Now, I should let you know that the fog, it was somewhat foggy when this incident occurred. Fire 3 even commented to Metro that he was having trouble seeing the ground, so he was not going to be very useful in a search, but that he would stay above as long as he could. He happened to be pretty low on fuel at the time, so he ultimately ended up having to leave to fuel. And by the way, Van Nuys, this flight, as this evolved, they figured out the flight. It had left Palm Springs, Bermuda Dunes to be specific, was headed back to Camarillo Airport, but at some point and for unknown reason, he decided to divert to Van Nuys Airport, which was a little bit closer. And that, I think, was the last traffic they had from him. So they're searching this area. Like I said, they searched for about an hour, and about 9:14, Fire 3, who was back up in the air after refueling, picked up the emergency locator transmitter. Now, most aircraft have an ELT of some kind. The older versions operate on 121.5 megahertz AM, and it's a very basic kind of a high-low signal that it puts out. Newer aircraft have 243 megahertz AM, and the latest have 406 megahertz AM, and the 406 radios have, to some degree, data included in the signal and are monitored by satellite. So the 406 is the ideal thing to have. This was an older aircraft, although a lot of the avionics had been updated. They were still using the 121.5 frequency. So Fire 3 picks up this ELT signal, but he hears it on the north side of Mulholland, in other words, the other side of the hill, and he directed ground units to that area, specifically an area called Deer Vale Park, Deer Vale Stone Canyon Park. Now this is just above the occupied area of the San Fernando Valley. The white line here is a pretty popular street. And again, it's remarkable that if a plane had gone down here, no one had heard it. But he was pretty sure from the ELT signal that the plane was down in this area. And this is, by the way, on the path that the plane would have been traveling headed to Van Nuys. So the search continued in this area for about a little over an hour. And during this time, one of the things I do, I volunteer with part of our CERT unit. We have a camera monitoring team. In California, and now more states are taking off, we have a number, over 1,000 in California, of cameras that are mounted on mountaintops that we monitor on high fire risk days for signs of smoke. And so this is what we do. We watch the cameras and report anything unusual. Well, we got alerted about an hour and a half into this incident that they wanted us to check the cameras and we can go back and look at historical data. So they told us go back to around 8 o'clock at night and see if we could see any signs of an aircraft, either an impact or the aircraft coming in. I also, about this time, turned on my Yaesu radio and tuned 121.5 because many of the ham 2-meter radios will receive AM transmissions on the aircraft band. So I tuned up 121.5 and I heard absolutely nothing. As we were communicating, we use Zello for our camera monitoring team. As we were communicating, I mentioned this frequency, and one of the guys who's on the south side of Mulholland tuned up 121.5, and I could hear in the background his radio was squawking away like no kidding. So just that alone was an indication that the plane was south of Mulholland, not north. Obviously, 2 stations are probably not scientifically valid, but the fact that I couldn't hear, and I'm not far north of this, I couldn't hear anything. He's quite a ways south of the peak, and he could hear the signal very well. So kind of an indication of what was going on there. So they searched this area for quite some time and didn't find anything. About an hour later, at 10:20, the U.S. Air Force contacted Metro Fire Dispatch and said their data indicated the flight was last seen at 1,300 feet altitude and south of Mulholland at about Beverly Glen. So again, they shifted all the ground units. The ground units have pretty much completed their search in the Deer Vale Park area and were ready to move somewhere else anyway. So they moved them again to the south side of Mulholland Drive, in the area around Mulholland Drive and Beverly Glen. The Air Force data had put the plane, this is about 1,300 foot altitude, just under 1,400 at the ridge. So the foot search began again, and they searched the area. Eventually, the units went down to Beverly Glen Circle, which is this loop in the lower left-hand corner, and they began talking to residents, and they talked to several residents who said, well, yeah, a couple hours ago I did hear something. I didn't think much of it. They all had different sort of versions of it, but several of them did report hearing some kind of a crash. One guy they interviewed said, it didn't sound like a car crash. We hear those a lot, but it didn't sound like that. It was really something different. We didn't think much about it. So anyway, so the search really concentrated on this area around Beverly Glen Circle. And sure enough, about an hour later, at 11:20, the planes located the crews located the aircraft right above Beverly Glen Circle on a hillside. You can't tell from the image. Two things that you can't tell. First of all, you can't tell how steep it is. It's a very, very steep hill, almost too steep to navigate by foot. And the picture, it looks pretty barren, but with all the rains we've had this year, it's a very heavily waist high or higher weeds, and the plane was not particularly evident. So while this is going on, I'm sort of thinking, I've done a little bit of tea hunting. I've taken a class on it. I've built a tape measure Yagi antenna. We actually used that antenna and some others to search down a jammer that we had. It was jamming our repeater on Monday nights when we do our net. And we were successful in the whole city of LA. We traced it down on 2 Mondays. The net only runs about 45 minutes, so we had to work quickly. But we were able to trace down where this jammer was to a particular apartment building in, ironically, Sherman Oaks, near where this happened. So that was a very useful skill to pick up. Anyway, I kept thinking that this was 3.5 hours from the first call to when they found the plane. And by the way, it's about 80 feet from the crash site to the nearest home, not very far at all. I kept thinking that, boy, hams, particularly my ACS group, because we're associated with the fire department, we could have gotten out there, and I guarantee you we could have told them early on which side of the ridge to search. And I'm pretty confident, especially based on what we learned about this site, that we probably could have found the airplane faster than they did. Obviously, there's no way to know that for sure. Just an interesting point, this is a water tower here, and next to that water tower is a radio tower, and that is LA Fire Department's one of their repeater sites. So he was just a couple hundred feet from making it over the top of the hill, and about 100 feet from taking out the fire department's radio transmitter site. So it was really interesting, and I really think that hams could use that, their skills and our radios. The helicopter, he's up high with an omnidirectional antenna. He obviously heard the signal but wasn't able to really accurately pin it down. And the fire department did get 6 aviation handheld radios from the airport, but those are also omnis, so they're not really good at trying to direction find. So I'm thinking that, boy, if we had trained our hams, I think we could have done better. So that was sort of my thinking during this whole incident. So how could ham radio help? Well, we've talked a lot about flight tracking, and I never heard, other than the FAA's radar, I never heard anything more in terms of detail. But this is the actual path of the aircraft as recorded by FlightAware. Just to orient you, this is Stone Canyon Reservoir, where they first started the search. This area here in the left center of the screen is Beverly Glen and Mulholland, and that path, you extend that path on, that is exactly where he crashed. So I really think we could have used our skills, both using flight tracking had we been doing that, and putting it together with fox hunting skills to focus the search at the very least. And I really believe that, if we were prepared to do it, and if we'd been called or I think we would have probably volunteered, called up and had our captain say, hey, look, my guys can probably help. We could have gotten up there, and I really feel like we could have found that plane in a lesser period of time. Now, the pilot was dead when they found him. Whether or not he survived the flight and, finding him early could have saved him, I don't know. That'll probably come out with the FAA report or NTSB report and the coroner's report. But I just really think that this is an area where hams could have helped, even if all we did was to alert all of our members to tune their radios to 121.5, and we took a poll, who can hear it, who can't. I think just that alone, we could have focused the search for them a little bit better. And that's what I've got. I'll send it back, I guess, to Chris.
Hey, thanks a lot, Dan. That's a great walkthrough of that whole process, and I know Dan reached out to us all very early that night to let us know that the plane had crashed and kind of what was going on, and we were all riveted to what was happening as it unfolded. And Dan kind of kept funneling information to us as we were going through that night. So again, a combination of using this ADS-B flight tracker information that can be just another tool in your toolbox, along with something like direction finding, fox hunting that we normally practice on a regular basis. Some of those skills really can come together in different ways for a variety of different reasons. David, I see you were able to, you were working on in the background, getting some stuff up and running. Do you want to give us a little update on where you're at with your setup there?
Sure, absolutely. Let me start with a quick screen share. So when this all started to happen, we all started talking about this and thought we were going to have a show. It's always a great opportunity to have a fun, shiny new toy. So I figured out I could have Jeffrey Bezos deliver me one of these the next day, and I hoped to have it up and running, by the showtime. And had some challenges. It was supposed to come yesterday and didn't get delivered until early this morning, and I pulled it out of the box. And I think my initial reaction was, this isn't the ADS-B tracker that I wanted it to be, and struggled with it and made some changes and went through a whole bunch of online help and support, and then ultimately was able to get it up and running. And you can see my screen now. We're tracking aircraft. And there were a whole bunch of tools that were needed. As Chris went through, I needed the RTL-1090 to collect the data from the tracker, and to get that up and running, you have to first start with this ZA dig to install the proper drivers. And then once you have those two together, then I walked into the virtual radar server, and honestly, I did that in the last 20 minutes while Chris was talking about it. I had everything up to this point working, but pulling it into the virtual radar server was really the key and important, and understanding how, IP ports work. The RTL-1090 is putting out the data at this port 31011, and I connected it over here. And when I was able to do that, I was able to go ahead and look at my localhost Windows port that's pointed towards that, and presto. If you can see right down here where my mouse is, where this November 77 X-ray Alpha is over Calabasas, that's about where my QTH is. And you can see there's quite a bit of air traffic going on that my receiver has access to and can read the data from. And it's up, it's running. Not sure how long I'll use it for or keep it up going. But I was able to get it to go for about $40. That USB flight stick worked well. I needed an extra antenna, and I bought an antenna from the same company. I think that was another $25 or $30. So about $70 into it. And it's up, it's running. I can see a lot of aircraft traffic going on right now. It's interesting. You can click into these and see information about it. Different flights that are going through the area. It was kind of fun. I did have a couple of frustrating moments, but was able to make it work. I saw there was a question in the chat about the antenna. And again, I basically, because this was kind of last minute, I sourced all of this through Amazon. Let me flip over to that other screen. The antenna I bought from Amazon was this, and really, as Chris pointed out, it's a receive antenna is really what you're looking for. If you want a mission approved, set for this actual activity, one of these ADSB type antennas you can get on Amazon will fit the mission. You're looking for one that'll go 1090 megahertz or 978. This is basically what I've got for the traffic that you can see right now on my screen. Sorry, I keep bouncing back and forth. For what you can see on my screen right now, you can see traffic up in the Sespe Wilderness. That's above Ojai, up above Ventura. The antenna that is receiving this data right now is literally standing on a speaker mounted tripod about 4 feet off the ground, standing next to my house. Obviously some of these planes that are further out, that's at 20,000 feet. This is at 31,000 feet. The ones that are higher up, I'm going to get a better distance outside. When it comes to the ones that are a little lower to the ground, you can see them a little bit closer there. So it was kind of a fun exercise. It's something I could deploy pretty quickly. There is definitely some quirkiness in getting the software up and running. Understanding you've got to load this piece and then add the driver, and then that will load the software that does the port tracker, and then you've got to go open your local host for the other software. It is a little convoluted. This is definitely not plug and play software, but as you can see, it got it working. And I received that little dongle thing less than 6 hours ago. So it wasn't plug it in and have it running, but it didn't take me days or weeks or months to do that.
Hey, Dave, can you bring your screen back up? Because I want to show you one of the nice things that I found that's different about just the built-in web browser display that I showed versus this virtual radar server is if you look in the upper left corner of your map, I want to point out before you click on that, notice how the aircraft that are flying around are riding around on little sticks.
Yep.
Right. So those are the altitude indicators.
Right.
So you can kind of get a sense of the three-dimensionality as to where those flights, where those planes are kind of flying around right now.
Right. Then, you can see as if I click on this one, it's come from off here. Well, it looks like it's way up here. The stick down shows it's at 24,000 feet, and this is actually where it is over the ground.
So let me show you how you can change that display a little bit. So in the upper left corner, where you can see where you have a menu button, if you click on that, the top option there is options. And this is how you can go in and you can configure a lot of the different parameters about what you're seeing on your map while you're seeing it. And if you go over to the aircraft tab, which is the third tab over, that top item there that you can uncheck that says the show the altitude stalk. Top item, and then when you close the window, you can see that the planes are now sitting down on the location where they're flying. So depending on what your needs are, you may find it helpful to see those the altitude stalks. It may be that you don't want to see them. There's also modes you can go in here where you can turn on to project into the future what the current flight path is going to be, and you can change the thickness of the line and all those kinds of fun stuff. So lots of things to get in and kind of play with and look at. So very cool.
Chris, one thing, if folks are considering doing this, Flight Radar 24 is one of the websites that does this, and I can show you on my screen here. If you see this, you may never ever want to get on an airplane again. This is Southern California right now. They will, if you're in an area where there is a lack of ADSB receivers, they will provide you with an ADSB receiver and free premium service on their website for free if they are lacking. Now, I applied for this and they came back and said, thank you, but we have enough receivers in your area. But then like 6 months later, they contacted me and said, hey, we're ready to send you your kit now. And I didn't reply because I'd already bought a kit, but that is something flightradar24.com. You can sign up and get that. And it doesn't hurt to try. And if they come back and say, hey, yeah, we need somebody in your area, your kit's in the mail.
So there was a question in the chat, if 1090 isn't the frequency in use in your area. I think standardization in the US, it's either 1090 or 978.
1090 is used across the US as far as
so if you're in the US, that should work. You should be able to find some flight data. I think the 97 is actually is it the voice traffic or some of the other telemetry?
It's a different bit of traffic. One of the nice things that you are able to do with the SDR Play, the RSP Duo in particular, is you could have two antennas connected to it, one of which is acting as your ADSB receive frequency, so you're able to pull in the data, and then you could have the second one tied to like maybe your local tower, or if you're on a deployment, maybe you want to listen to the air to ground frequency to hear the traffic that's going on and have it really tied to that situational awareness that you have going on there. So just a couple of different options that are available.
And most planes now are required to have at least ADSB out, in other words, transmitting. It has changed in recent years, and they're adding more and more planes. But most aircraft, with a few exceptions, are required to have that. Which, when you combine that with some of the new apps that pilots can use, there's one called ForeFlight. Just unbelievable the amount of data that they can get. By the way, this plane that crashed, it was an older plane. I think it was an early 70s maybe, or mid 70s, Cessna 172, but it did have updated avionics in it. So that begs the question too, why he didn't know where the ground was. And with the fog, he may have become disoriented. I'm thinking he may have run out of fuel, because he did change his destination from Camarillo Airport, which is a little more distant, to Van Nuys Airport. And of course, there was no fire when he crashed, and that's often an indication that there was no fuel on board. So hard to know. Again, hopefully the NTSB can figure that out and clue us all in.
Very cool. So we've also got a couple of other questions. One that came in: which version of ADSB dump 1090 should we download from SDR.com? If you're on the website, that it's got the three different options. The one in the middle is the one that's the IMS version, and that's basically just the installer and the updater that goes along with it. There is another program that you can get that's called Dump 1090. If you download and you install that as well, that one will work with the rtl-sdr dongle, and it will do the little web browser trick thing that I showed you as well. So there's a lot of options to get in and be able to do a lot of these different things. We're not trying to show you as like, here's the one way to do it or the one set of hardware to be able to use. You'll have to figure out kind of what gear you have specifically and how you can make it all work to be able to do it. But the process is generally pretty much the same. You need a receiver, you need a decoder, and then you need some way to be able to display those data. So with
Chris,
that.
Chris, are the plugins specific to a particular SDR radio? I know when I was playing around with SDRs a year ago, I was very confused as to which software worked with my SDR and which
Sure.
plugins.
Sure. And I was likewise, I was very confused with that because when I first started trying to do this stuff, I just went cheap and I bought the rtl-sdr dongle and I figured, well, SDR is an SDR and it'll all work. And I spent a lot of time being very frustrated trying to get this thing to work because there were all kinds of terms and setup things that I just didn't fully understand. Ultimately, I broke down and I went ahead and I bought one of these SDR Play, the RSP Duos, and was able to get that up and running with the software that's really configured for this, that SDR Uno software that you get from SDR Play. And this made all the difference. I mean, it was so easy to be able to set up. It took me a long time to figure out how to get the RTL SDR to do the flight tracking and to make it work and configure plane plotter and get all the extra bits and pieces that I needed. This was literally install the app, install the plugin, push go, and it just it worked kind of right away. So I have seen instructions on how to hack the SDR Uno software so you can use it with an RTL SDR dongle, because these are a heck of a lot cheaper than the SDR Plays. But I will say these things get wicked hot when they're plugged in. So you definitely don't want it plugged in directly into your computer. You want it on a little USB tail if you can get it away, so you can get a little more airflow around this thing, because it gets just smoking hot and it does burn a lot of battery power. The SDR Uno has external power. It runs off of 12 volts. This is just connected literally into a 12 amp hour Bioenno battery that I've got here that I just wired some power poles onto the connector here to make it work. And this just flat out works super easy. So,
Chris, when I was researching the low end SDRs, the heat was something that was commented on, and with the heat goes often frequency drift.
Yeah.
And one of the differences between the $20 SDRs and the more expensive ones were, how much frequency drift you get as they warm up, and it seems to be a fairly significant difference.
Yeah, no, I will say, let me go ahead and bring this back up if I can get it to show all of my screens again. Here I'm in the corner. You will notice earlier when I switched away and I came back to this, I did get a little bit of frequency drift that did happen, but it has corrected itself over time. I've got the SDR Uno running again. I rehooked this up in the back while Dan was talking, and it literally just works. I wanted to also show you real quick before we do a little wrap up here. I've got my web browser running. So in this tab, I have virtual radar operating, and you can see the way that it looks. Here's that menu button. This is the thing that David got up and running on his. You can see as I've been leaving it run, you can see some of the longer trails as to where the flights are flying around. I also have from that dump 1090, just the built-in web browser. This is also showing you all of the same data that's here. I'm not sure which of those planes it was that had that nice swooping path that we were getting, but you can see some of these that are kind of flying around here. But this just shows you some of the differences in the way that the data are displayed. I think in the built-in web browser version, you get a little bit less control over how you want to display your information. The virtual radar server, where you have this menu options up here, you have a lot more control as to how you can display the data. But ultimately, at least for me, for what I'm looking for, I'm really curious to see kind of where this trail goes, so I can see where the actual plane is and where it's doing the water drops, because that's super important to me for my situation.
I'm surprised there's not more activity up by Santa Paula That's a real popular general aviation airport, and a lot of experimental planes and stuff up there.
Well,
Yeah, this little airport right in here. So from my location, I actually have my antennas on the west side of my house. So I'm actually getting a lot of blockage from the house. So, the literally the antenna is sitting in between two houses right now. So it's actually not a very ideal kind of setup, but mostly to be able to just do some demos for the information.
Yeah, I see about a half a dozen planes circling around that area specifically.
Yeah,
even from where I am here in Woodland Hills.
Yeah, you're at a much higher location than I am.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's kind of a run through of that. Let me bring back up WinLink here, and let's do a quick check and see if everybody's sent in their check-ins. I'll go ahead and open the session again. I've been checking periodically to make sure we had all these downloaded, but if you haven't sent in your check-in, go ahead and send that in. While we're doing that, if you're finding the information helpful that we're putting out, be sure to go onto our YouTube channel, like the content, leave us a comment, let us know kind of what you're up to, whether it was helpful or not. If you really find the information helpful, go onto wavetalkers.com and use that Buy Me a Coffee link, and that really helps support us with keeping all this infrastructure up and running on the air. So let me do one more quick check here. Looks like we've gotten all of them. So we'll go ahead and close that. I'm going to bring up the map now, and we'll map all of the WinLink check-ins. I'll bring up the display map option, blow that out to full screen, and then we'll go ahead and zoom all the way out to a global view. Right click and pan, and we'll see where some of these check-ins are coming in from. It looks like we've got Terry joining us down there in New Zealand, ZL1HOG. Great to see you again. As always, Terry.
Happy Monday, Terry.
Happy Monday. We've got the folks there in the Philippines, DU3GKT joining us. Hey, thanks a lot. Always great to see you there as well. Looks like we got Franz and Roland joining us from Austria and Germany, respectively. And we'll go ahead and zoom into North America. We'll see where we've got folks joining us. We'll continue in the international crowd. Victor Echo 3 Yankee X-Ray. Thanks a lot for joining us up there in the Ottawa area. And some more folks that are joining us here. There's Rory in Southern Virginia. And who else do we got? KG4 EDY joining us. We've got some more folks here in the Tennessee area, Arkansas. I don't think we've had somebody join us from Arkansas, so great to see you. KG5KS, hey, thanks a lot for joining us there. Down here in the Houston area, we've got John and King joining us up here in Wisconsin, Iowa, coming across here to Kansas, a few more of these folks here into Colorado, drop down here into New Mexico, up into Montana and Idaho, and more into Montana up here. We'll come up here to the Pacific Northwest. We've got a few that are up here in the Washington area. There's Bill. Hey, Bill, great to see you. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little bit to Southwest. A little bit better view on these stations in Utah and in the Vegas area joining us. Hey, thanks a lot for checking in up here in the Sacramento area, up in the Piedmont, and down here into the San Francisco Bay area. Great to see all of you folks joining us in all of those areas. Let me zoom in a little bit tighter on Southern California so we can see all of the folks that are joining us from over there. And K6COB, I'm looking to see if we got Lloyd, if he actually checked in. There's Craig, KG6IJJ. Lloyd's joining us out here on the West Coast on some travel, so it's great to see that. And there's Logan joining us over there. So thanks a lot for checking in. And with that, let me go ahead and bring myself back up to screen, and we'll bring the guys back up for one more quick go around here. As any closing thoughts that folks have. Dan, why don't we start with you, NR6V?
This is kind of neat stuff, and I tell you, this aircraft incident has really stimulated a lot of interest in tea hunting and in our group, and I look forward to us putting together a package. And With a volunteer group, one of the struggles is always to get your served agency to recognize you, and our folks in CERT here in LA have done a remarkable job of integrating themselves into the fire department. They do things like hydration for firefighters during major fires. Before CERT started doing that, they would pull a paramedic rig out of service and have paramedics handing out bottled water, which is not exactly the best use of manpower, but it's something that has to be done. So now the CERT folks do that. They also do wires down calls when we have inclement weather and a lot of power lines down. A fire department engine company has to sit and babysit those lines until water and power comes out and repairs them. That could be 4, 5, 6 hours, and the CERT people now do that and have put the fire rigs back into service. So our ACS group has been working to try to find some hook into the fire department that can get us a little more integrated. And although this kind of incident may not happen again for 20 years, the way things work, it could happen tomorrow. So we're looking forward to using that as not only a way to serve the public, but to get some recognition in the department. Had we been able to show up that night and say, "Hi, we're from ACS, we think we can find the plane for you," they know us well enough not to totally dismiss us. And hopefully this is something where we can serve, and certainly using the flight tracking stuff would help us to focus in on where to look.
Very cool. David, W0DHG, any closing thoughts from you today?
Yeah, this was a great dive into what our amateur radio licenses allows us to do, which is play with technology, experiment, tinker, take stuff apart, put it together. There was definitely a little less wire building and soldering than I usually do on projects like this, but literally we spent the last week kind of deep diving into this opportunity to see like, what can we do with RF, and a dongle and an antenna and some software, and we're tracking planes all over the Southern California area. Just another opportunity for us to dive into something, learn about it, and it may or may not be something that would be important or applicable to our served agencies or to the folks that we work with, but it does show that we can take a problem, get a problem, and figure out a possible solution for it. And within a couple of days, Chris and Dan and I talked about it. We've all got trackers up and running. Literally, the stuff that I'm up and running with, got delivered this morning at 8:00. And up and running. Wasn't too hard. It was a little bit of fun. I did have some frustrating moments, but it is part of our license to experiment in amateur radio, and we should all be doing that.
And this got some of our members. Most of our members weren't aware that their radios could pick up AM, and we've put that out there now. And we've got folks check your radio, check the spec sheet, see if you can pick up AM. Some of the radios, like the Yaesu FT60, that will receive the 243.0. It'll tune up into that range. That's a little unusual, I think. Most of them don't. But a lot of them will do the 121.5.
Yeah, almost all of the Yaesu handhelds are wideband receive. So you can tune a lot of that into the HF frequencies you should be able to receive with those radios.
I know for me, this was a really key thing for me when I saw that tweet that Ben put out, where he was showing a map that was tracking this helicopter that was doing the water drops on a fire, that I was very focused on making sure that I knew where the smoke patterns were so I could try and avoid, and where's the fire? Where is the fire located right now? It really cemented this idea of these ham radio superpowers. And yeah, in order to be able to do this, you don't have to have a ham radio license. Anyone is able to do this. The information, the RF is out there, The part that really the license super helps with is having the background knowledge of knowing how these different components go together, understanding more about RF, and knowing, you know what, I don't actually have to go out and buy the special $40 antenna. I can just use the regular 2-meter antenna that I've got. It's close enough to be able to receive the frequencies and to be able to map those out. So it kind of goes into the whole realm here of a license to play is really what we have with our ham radio license. We have access to a lot of spectrum and a lot of capabilities, and it really helps us move along. So with that, I want to say thanks everyone for joining us for another week here for episode number 70 of WaveTalkers Live. And we're going to, if you're inside of the Zoom, hang around. We're going to open up the mics for the after party. If you'd like to join us for any of the after parties, be sure to go onto wavetalkers.com. At the bottom of every page is a join us link. You can sign up for our email list, and we can send you a link each week to join us in the live Zoom audience that we have, and then participate in the after party with us. So with that, we'll say 7-3 to everyone, and we'll see you all next week on the live streams. And if you're here inside of the Zoom, hang around. Thanks a lot, everyone. 7-3.